I would like to start by introducing myself, and then I will introduce this panel. My name is Rana Bakr, and I am a lecturer in the history of the Middle East here at King's. I'm very pleased and honored to be introducing this panel today. And I'll start with Raji Sourani, who is one of Palestine's most prominent human rights lawyers, as you all probably know. He's also the founding director of the Palestinian Center for Human Rights in Gaza. For over 4 decades, he has documented violations of international law in the occupied Palestinian territories and pursued justice through legal channels, despite facing imprisonment and travel bans for his work. He's also the recipient of the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award and the Right Livelihood Award. So welcome. I actually know Ammu Raji in Gaza. And he doesn't remember me, but I met him when I was a teen. So it's like really an honor to be sitting next to you. And then our second speaker today for this panel is Dr. Dalal Iriqat, who is an associate professor of diplomacy and strategic thinking at the Arab American University in Palestine. She is a weekly columnist at Al-Quds newspaper and is the founding member of the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network. Dalal was identified as well as a young global leader at the World Economic Forum and is the founding president of Business and Professional Women Network. She also serves as a PADICO holding board member. So welcome to both of you. I'm gonna hand it over to Ammu Raji first. And yeah, so if you could please keep it to 20 minutes and then 20 minutes for Dalal, and then we can take a couple of questions, hopefully, this time.
Friends, colleagues, and I'm really humbled to see many of you here. And I'm humbled as well having two young, fantastic ladies, sitting next to me. They are tomorrow, and that's assuring us we are on the right track. We are the stones of the valley. We have the educated, the powerful, the enlightened, and the people who can defend their just and fair cause till the last breath. So no wonder when we call ourselves the stones of the valley. We are the stones of the valley. They are the stones of the valley. They have been there since ever, and they will continue forever, hopefully. Some suggest that Palestinian-Israeli conflict began October 7th, and I don't know why. Palestinian-Israeli conflict, long story. In 76 years, this conflict began in 1948, and in the short story, 58 years in 1967. Many things, the human rights violations of Israel just began, after October 7 with this genocide. It has been long time ago. We Palestinians didn't invent, believe me, the international law, international humanitarian law, and the human rights. This is the crème de la crème of the human experience. You are all aware that after the Second World War, intellectuals, politicians, sociologists get together to discuss how 85 million Europeans, civilians, erased, how cities, villages, erased, how the Holocaust happened, etc. Civilians are not part of the war, and they shouldn't be. Wars between armies, and they have their rules of engagements, but civilians should be protected. That's the nitty-gritty idea of IHL and the human rights. At the time of war, civilians should be protected. That's why Geneva Conventions were there. That's why Universal Declaration for Human Rights were there. And that's why Nuremberg trial were there for accountability. And that's why the Convention of Prevention of Genocide crime was there. And they said, never again. We didn't go to the international justice out of the blue. They said, you Palestinians are stupid, demagogue. You talk too much politics. You never tried this oasis of democracy and its judicial system. You have to try it. Okay. Why? They said, this is a very eloquent, sophisticated legal system, and they should be used, and you will have justice and dignity. Ever anybody got justice and dignity under occupation? But with that, we said, fine. We invested our best, and Israel obviously legitimized torture, legitimized extrajudicial killing, expulsion, land confiscation, settlements, and collective punishment, and they legitimized the blockade even. In one of the High Court of Justice in Israel decisions, they said, nobody should be worried about famine in Gaza. We count how many calories each Gazan take. Shame on them! Shame on them! And they kept saying, no, this is the best in the West. We and B'Tselem concluded very concrete report about accountability in Israel. And in this report, it has been stated very concrete result. Israeli legal system, unable and unwilling to hold anybody accountable. That's why we resorted after that to universal jurisdictions. You have to exhaust all national remedies in accountability. And we did that. And when we began to do that, in UK, in Spain, in Switzerland, in Netherlands, in New Zealand, in US, in different countries in the world, we were blocked politically by Europe, especially through legal legislations at the parliaments or a procedural, and we were not able almost to hold accountable anybody. So there was a new layer of protection for suspected war criminals. Then we resorted to ICC. We began 2008, especially after the attack on Gaza, in 2008-9. And civilian targets were in the eye of the storm at that war. And Ocampo, the prosecutor, put 5 conditions for us to join. We overcome that 2012 until 2015. We managed to convince our leadership to resort to that. And Palestine became a member of the ICC. And we approached Fatou Bensouda, 5 years of preliminary examination and 2 years to prove that, that occupied territories have Rome Statute applicable in it. And then Fatou Bensouda, this solid, strong piece of African marble, opened the investigation with all the American pressure on it, which is very known, and with all the pressure Israel mounted on her, and she was directly threatened by the head of the Mossad at her office, in the court. Mr. Karim Khan took over 4 months after that. He refused to see us for 2 years. 2 years! For no reason. Ukraine war erupted, and out of the blue, in 43 days, there was an office of ICC prosecutor in Kiev with 46 staff members. Why is that? Because US and Europe said, invasion, occupation, we cannot tolerate that. Russians are criminals. They should be held accountable. And that's what had happened. They said, it's not only we have to get them. We have to call all free European and Americans to take the arms and fight with the Ukrainians for Ukrainian right of self-determination. They have the right to resist the occupation by all ways and means. We were so happy. We said, the world waked up. Europe realized invasion and occupation is evil, and that should be confronted. But that didn't move things anywhere. They didn't satisfy with that. They sanctioned Russia with 7 waves of sanctions to destroy their economy. We said, that's good and good initiative. Then they began to back Ukraine with arms, with economy, and many different things. And they resorted to ICC and ICJ. And the ICC, in 1 year, there was warrant against Putin. And again, I mean, we appealed, we asked, we have prolonged belligerent criminal occupation. Didn't go anywhere. We have very long record of crimes against humanity, persecution, name it. The blockade on the Gaza for 17 years. We have the war of 2008, 9, 2012, 14, 17, 21, 22, 23. Nobody listening. When October 7th happened, we resorted to the ICC because it was obvious. And I would remind you, if you forget, not Smotrich or some hunky-bunky people in Israel said some strange statements. I'll give you a quote for 3 important people. President of Israel, he said, we will not distinction between Hamas and civilians in Gaza. We will get them all. All of them will be held accountable and will be targeted. This is in 10th of October. Prime Minister Netanyahu said Gazans should leave Gaza, either up or to Sinai. And that's why they began pushing everybody in Gaza. 3, the Minister of Defense of Israel, he said in simple words, there will be no water, no food, no electricity, and no fuel. So the message was simple and clear. We formed a group called Genocide Group on October 16. It's about 30 of top-notches, international lawyers, academics, and the human rights activists. With the feed we are having, we concluded this is a genocide. There is some people till today suspecting this is genocide. Shame on them. How many they want to see killings of children and women? How many they want to see destruction, famine, and displacement? 18,000 children in Gaza erased. I challenge, if this number in Israel has been killed, Israel will use atomic bomb. But our blood so cheap, we say, well, I mean, this is disputable. I mean, don't take it. I mean, this is intellectual discussion, legal discussion. This might be. We gave 840 statements to the ICJ reflecting the intent, which is the most difficult part of proving the genocide, to the court. Is it enough 90% of Gaza erased and destroyed? Why you take the children from the children's hospital, from the incubator, put them on the tables to die in tens? They are headquarters of Hamas. Why you bomb the same hospitals with phosphoric bombs? And you bomb and kill doctors, nurses, patients, old, young. In one bomb, 400 in the Baptist hospital in Gaza. One bomb. Like this day, last year, there was in Rafah and the Mawasi of Rafah, just next to the Egyptian border, 1.9 million people. In 27 square kilometers. When Netanyahu attacked, everybody knew this attack on Rafah and Mawasi will lead these 2 million people will be in Sinai. This is the mathematics, but the chemistry showed in very simple way. Gaza, 80% of it, refugees. And they have the trauma of Nakba. And our code pink, never again. We cannot repeat the Nakba again. And that's why people, when they attacked Rafah, they went back to the north. And that's why this failed to happen, not because of anything else. Now, we resorted to the South African, who then disappoint us. And on 29th of December 2023, they filed the case to the ICJ. And it was received well. January 11th, 2024, the first session was there. And the legal team, which is for me second to none, South African, Irish, and Palestinian combination, through the lawyers, they just put the pain and suffering, the souls of the children and women, the really crime on the stage of the court. I think next day it was very clear. The Israelis has no case to answer. After that, 3 provisional measures has been taken on humanitarian aid and food to go to Gaza. It's simple, clear, and they ask Israel to report about that. And what had happened, that the court doesn't have law enforcement agency. The law enforcement agency, the states, but this was like in the most important court on earth, like very academic, with all due respect to academia, or intellectuals, discussion. I mean, nothing had happened. Whereas the states, who should put that in a practice. This didn't happen. Now, 2 decisions, 2 warrants against Bibi and Gallant. Again, Europe compete. Who says Bibi most welcome, there will be no problem? UK, France, Germany, and Netherlands. Now, what we can say about rule of law? International law, international humanitarian law, and the human rights for intellectuals, for academics, or for civilians to have it on their skin and feel it. Are they shifting Gaza to be the graveyard of international law, international humanitarian law, or not? I'll stop here and give you the floor. And I hope on what Britain should do through the questions and answers later.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Is it working?
Yeah.
You could try that as well.
Speak, right? Speak.
Do you hear me? Hello?
I'll have it. I'll have it.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much. Allow me to start by thanking the Britain-Palestine Project, Vincent, Andrew, Brian, Diane, and everybody here. And to each and every one of you who had showed up today. Your conscious and responsible leadership in this world really matters. Today in academia, we farewell Joseph Nye. Joseph Nye had pioneered soft power. It's basically what each and every one of you can do in this world. I am a professor of diplomacy. You cannot envy me today. My students, the researchers, every Palestinian really ask me, do you believe in what you teach us? My conclusion after 19 months of genocide is unfortunately diplomacy had failed humanity in the 21st century. Multilateralism had failed 2.3 million civilians in Gaza, 1 million children. Yes, 70% of those are already refugees, had been displaced 12 or more times in the past 19 months. I'm not here to vent, but I think we need to zoom in. And we need to remember those numbers. Before October 7th, Gaza had suffered a severe blockade. Nothing was allowed in. And some people are under the impression, because Sharon then, in 2005, tried to convince the whole world with his Hasbara and strategic communication strategies that Israel had liberated Gaza. And look, 18 years forward, what the Palestinians did with Gaza. They turned Gaza into tunnels, and they are waging a war against the Israeli civilians. Well, it is my duty as an academic, as a scholar, as a human being, as a mother, and as a responsible individual, to remind the whole world that it is true that Sharon withdrew. He redeployed in 2005. But not for one single day did the Israelis seize control over Gaza, whether from the land, the sea, or the space. I myself was in Gaza in September 2023. When I applied to go to Gaza, my papers took 3 months after security clearances, not from Hamas, but from the Israeli military authorities. After 60,000 martyrs in Gaza, 18,000 children, 13,000 women now, and more than 200,000 wounded. To put things in context, and as Israel is trying to still convince the world that they are waging a war against Hamas, I need to correct this narrative. Israel is basically waging a war against the Palestinian right to self-determination. Israel is waging a war against truth. That's why we saw the Israeli military forces murder Shireen Abu Akleh, the fine journalist, woman, Christian, American, who was only doing her job in putting out the truth of brutal, criminal, cruel Israel. But they did not stop at Shireen Abu Akleh. They also targeted Hind Rajab, the baby in Gaza. My message to you that we need to remember, after all the legal and diplomatic developments, which I highly praise as a scholar, reaching the ICG, the ICC, it's very important developments, which we should not abandon as individuals and as Palestinians specifically. However, it is important to remember that for 77 years, more than 7 decades, we in Palestine have been suffering an Israeli military occupation. This Israeli military occupation comes in a framework, and this framework, I must remind everyone, has different shapes of racism, apartheid. It's a protracted, of course, occupation, prolonged settler colonialism on our grounds, extrajudicial killings, confiscations of lands on daily basis, arrests, administrative detentions. Israel today is the one and only country in the world that actually practices administrative detention. And while I, as a Palestinian mother and scholar, say yes, every hostage deserves to be released, I am also obliged to remind the whole world that more than 11,500 Palestinians are still behind Israeli bars. Those are also entitled to freedom. Structural violence, deprivation of basic rights. Israel had actually inspired the whole world and academia to come up with a new terminology. The new terminology includes, sorry. Okay. Now, we don't only talk about genocide, which provokes some audience. Now we have the destruction of education, which we refer to as educide, destruction of the ecosystem, the environment, ecocide, biocide, gendercide, politicide. This is all done by a state-organized terror called Israel. And guess what? Recognized by the world, including where we are today in the UK. For some reason, there is some selective media coverage, and I don't want to judge. Gaza deserves all attention, and after 19 months of genocide and without being able to hold Israel accountable, to hold the Israeli war criminals accountable, we need to remember that Israel is in parallel waging a war against the West Bank. You might have heard about the raids, the attacks in the refugee camps of Jenin, Tul Karem, Nur Shams. I want to tell you, as I am coming from Ramallah in the West Bank, that every Palestinian community is targeted. Whether you are in Nablus in the north, Tul Karem, Qalqilia, Jenin, Tubas, Jericho, Ramallah, Hebron, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, every Palestinian is targeted. The Israeli military machine doesn't really care if you're a woman, if you're a child, if you're an elderly, if you're Christian, Muslim, black, white, whatever ideology you carry, they really don't care. They don't even look at us as human beings to start with. However, now when we look at things, as an expert in conflict resolution, I am not here to speak only about international law because many of my colleagues and peers I learn from you. But I'm here to also remind everyone that in conflict resolution, negotiations is one tool, one peaceful tool to conflict resolution. It is not the only tool, and it is not the goal in itself. Maybe it's unintentional, however, world leaders today treat negotiations as if it is the goal in itself. I need to remind everyone that there are other tools to conflict resolution. We are facing a settler colonial project. And this is not terminology that we're using only in academia. Again, while everybody is still advocating for the two-state solution, and yes, as we are praising the Saudi-French initiative to take place in June 2025, next month in New York, to implement the two-state solution, I need to warn, it's my obligation to remind everybody that from a realpolitik perspective and from a geopolitical lens, Israel did not leave room for the Palestinian state or for the two-state solution that we're still talking about. It is a sad reality, but I think we need to wake up. And unless we're very serious about the advocacy of the two-state solution, then Israel needs to be held accountable right now. And in my advocacy for the two-state solution, I want to also maybe warn that the rhetoric of the two-state solution cannot continue unless we tackle the root cause of instability in the region, the root cause of all the atrocities that we are witnessing, the root cause of genocide, the root cause of all the war crimes that we are witnessing, not only in Gaza and the West Bank and East Jerusalem, but the cause for the instability and the lack of prosperity in the whole region, for the Palestinians and the Israelis alike. The root cause of our bad reality is the Israeli military occupation, and that's where we need to start. Just to give you some data, for the past 4 months alone, Israel had legalized 15,000 units. So while Netanyahu and his extreme right government, the criminal personalities like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, are calling for their annexation projects, the greater project of Israel, annexation of Judea and Samaria, they are still annexing, confiscating for the benefits of their settler colonial project. So this is not theory that we are talking. This is practicality. This is reality on the ground. I urge each and every one of you to come and witness with your own eyes. His Excellency, our ambassador, today mentioned the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed between the government of the UK and the Palestinian government. I really loved and was very impressed by the civilized, developed language that was used on a diplomatic level. However, after carefully reading the MOU, I was a bit astonished that some legal anchors were missing in the text. For example, the memorandum avoided using the term occupation. It avoided using the term apartheid. It avoided using the term settlements or settlers. It avoided using the term British Mandate or Balfour Declaration, let alone genocide. And here, I studied diplomatic studies here in London. So that's where I was educated on diplomacy. And that's why I really feel that I have a right to ask the British government, why were those terminology missing in the text? Unless we realize and we deal with the reality that all the atrocities and the war crimes and the sufferings of humanity that we are witnessing are because of the Israeli military occupation, then I don't think anything could stop the war crimes of the Israeli military authorities. As long as Netanyahu and his government are enjoying impunity, which is provided by the UK and the like-minded countries, nothing will stop their madness. I must mention that the MOU did talk about the UK's respect and obligation to international humanitarian law, and they did refer to the PLO, and they did talk about the respect to the Palestinian right to self-determination, including in a state. So I'm not here to only criticize the MOU. I just want to question from a diplomatic and legal perspective, why are we not daring to call a spade a spade? Why aren't we daring to say that Netanyahu is imposing the most prolonged military occupation on earth in 2025? What I can conclude is that because of those missing legal anchors, that there is a missed opportunity to align with international law. And since the title of the conference today is the rule of law, we can conclude that international law is at crisis and that diplomacy is really failing humanity in the 21st century. However, my answer to my students is that I, as a Palestinian, whether I am a civilian or a decision maker, I don't have a choice to abandon the diplomatic tools. They are civilized, they are peaceful, they are legal, they are not contested, they document the truth. And hopefully, with the people like yourselves, the projects, the scholars, the academics, that yes, we will go somewhere. Israel cannot continue with enjoying their impunity. This reality cannot go on forever. And the good news that we as Palestinians are still there. And we are a people who have a struggle for freedom. We're there not because we want to get rid of anybody. We're there because we have a right to self-determination. We have a right to dignity, freedom, statehood, and sovereignty. And because Raji was referring to myself and Rana as the younger generation, I want to share with you a small anecdote. When I was really young, a teenager, our leadership promised us that through negotiations, dialogue, diplomacy, and peace tracks, we will get to our state, our sovereignty, our freedom, our liberation. 35 years later, what I witnessed on the ground is more entrenched Israeli military occupation, more confiscations of lands, more extrajudicial killings, more arbitrary detentions, more apartheid, and more state-organized terror, while the whole world is watching and nobody is able to hold the criminals accountable. I'm not pessimistic. I'm a very optimistic Palestinian. And I think that we have an individual and collective responsibility as Palestinians to serve our national interests, not only in self-determination, but also liberation and dignity, and to find a better tomorrow for ourselves and for the generations to come, for the Palestinians, Israelis, and all the people in the region. And I want to finish on a positive note. This is a picture, I am in the middle, that was taken in September 2023 in Gaza. I am surrounded by 80 women in Gaza. Those are academics, entrepreneurs, businesswomen, owners, and leaders in the Gaza community. We gathered in September to prepare and organize for the Palestinian Women's Summit that was supposed to take place in March 2024. Sadly enough, and with a heavy heart, of course, we could not continue. The sad news that, yes, many of those women had lost loved ones, homes, property, and most of them had been forcibly displaced. However, I also want to remember and remind everyone that the scene that we all saw on screens in January when the ceasefire was announced of millions of people returning from the south to the north is only a single indication and proof and evidence that was documented that the Palestinians will not be displaced, they will not be evicted, and that they are there because they have a struggle for their freedom. Can I show the video? Did it show? Oh, here. Can you press on the last slide? The second photo, yes. There is a play button. You don't see it? Oh, here. It's on my screen. You don't see it? No. No? Anyway, let's show the second picture, please, photo. This is the scene I was referring to, and it's a video here, which I couldn't play. It just show you how...
No, that just moves the slide forward.
It's all right, it's all right. I'll finish here to give some room for discussion, and thank you.
So we'll shorten the final session a bit, so we have time for about 15, 20 minutes for discussion. So we'll take a round of perhaps 2 or 3 questions and might have time for a second one if we can. I see someone in the middle there, right in front of me, 2 rows up, in the middle of the row, yes? And then maybe, why don't we take those 3 people in that row together, from the middle here, yeah, pass the mic along, and then you, and then the gentleman on the end. We'll just take 3 in that row to start, and then we'll go elsewhere for the second round if we have time. Yeah, please.
Is it on?
I think so. Try again.
Is it on? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for this conference. Thank you for your contributions. And as Palestinians, I'd like some response from you. This morning, we learned about how UNRWA has had to crawl back. Well, it's being made ineffective in terms of humanitarian aid, in terms of staff, all of that happening. Now, we've talked about, or you've talked about now, just the frustration because of law is not being implemented. And looking at ways to really support the Palestinians at this crucial time when they feel so utterly abandoned by the rest of the world. And I'm wondering if this is a time when you feel there should be call for other types of activity, which includes more internationals going over there to provide protective presence. We can't get into Gaza, but we can get into the West Bank. To do documentation, to stand with the Palestinians. You know, if we could have hundreds and thousands of internationals going over there, would it make a difference? Could you just comment on things like that? Thank you.
Over to the 4 people along? Yes, to you, please. Thank you.
Mine's very quick.
Yeah, hold the mic to your mouth, please. Yeah.
Okay, what is the point of having a convention against the prevention and punishment of genocide if, as Baroness Hale told us, they're going to take years and years and years to decide? What is the point?
Thank you. And finally, the gentleman at the end of the row. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Dalal, I'll give you one piece of comfort. Winston Churchill famously said that diplomacy is a means of telling someone to go to hell in such a way that they'll look forward to the journey. I just want to make one point. I'm former chairman of NATO Critical Infrastructure Protection. And what I've seen, let's say since the end of the Second World War, is that the whole world is suffused with proxy wars, where countries like Israel, Palestine, Vietnam, everyone else, their wars are sustained and, in fact, deliberately manipulated by the bigger players. And so, for instance, the ghost at this feast, for instance, no one mentions it, is Iran and the United States. Iran with its determination to destroy Israel, and the United States with its equal determination to bring in the rapture, as they call it. Answer? I think the only answer is to strip the United Nations Security Council of its single veto and let the rule of law really work throughout the world.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll, if you'd like to respond to any or these questions.
I will say the following regarding the question why we go to the court. I have to make it very clear. There isn't one precedent in history a country realized its self-determination, independence through court decision. We are not illusionists. Why we resort to that? We resort to the court because we have shared values. We have shared standards. This is the crème de la crème of the human experience. This is what we agreed upon as international community. Political rhetoric, it's open-ended, and it depends on logic, etc. When you talk to courts, there is very candid language, facts, standards, conclusion. And that's why we are very strong in that, because we are equipped with knowledge. We have the best well-documented conflict in the modern history. You apply the facts on the standards and you come to simple conclusion. That means you have moral, legal, human superiority on the criminals who are doing war crimes, the crimes against humanity, persecution, making the shame. Now, Israel at the ICJ accused of their pride. The Holocaust, always, they say, we are the victims. But we showed, and we are showing, that they are the victimizers and the genociders of the Palestinians. And they are doing evil. We don't deserve that. When they were Holocausted in Europe, they fled to us, to the safe haven. We sheltered them. We feeded them. But once and again, we don't deserve that. We deserve dignity. We deserve justice. We deserve our right of self-determination. And one day, we will get it. I want to warn many talking about Palestinian situation right now as if it's a humanitarian situation. It's not. It's first-class political case. And And I'm sure that it will take some time. It will take a lot of blood and souls, but we have no right to give up. We have no right to lose hope. And we will keep our strategical optimism because we know we are in the right side of history.
I'll pass it over to you, Dalal, if you'd like to respond.
Well, it's true multilateralism had failed humanity. However, yes, to answer your question, on bilateral level, there is a lot that states and individuals could do. And I can spell out a couple of practical steps, which all come under the label of coercive diplomacy. Diplomacy which is legal as a world practice. Sanctions, for example. And not only in sanctioning the violent settlers. Settlements like settlers are all illegal. Full stop. Then everything needs to be sanctions when it has to do with settlers, settlements, or our own citizens who are now living on illegal space in Israeli settlements in the West Bank. So there is a lot that we could do. The British citizens residing there, British citizens serving in the army. And another thing which is very, very important, arms embargo, arms sale. I mean, Israel is getting not only the strategic communication support of your country, but also the strategic military support, the militarization, financial, legal support. So there is a lot of things that we could do. I'm not saying, and I'm not advocating for the boycott of relations with Israel. I'm just saying if the UK is actually bragging about Israel being their strategic alliance, or about Israel sharing values with the UK, then I think this way they are insulting their own citizens who are protesting on a weekly basis in London and all the campuses all around the UK. Because if I understand politics, I should be seeing public opinion reflected in the foreign policy of the UK. And we should not be seeing more hesitation of the UK government whether they want to recognize the Palestinian state or no. And yes, Palestine, neither Gaza, is a humanitarian case. Never. And while I see the urgency and the dire need for humanitarian aid, like the UNRWA was saying, to be let into Gaza, food, electricity, water, fuel, medicine, homes, and everything. Yes, there's an urgent need. However, this should not come in replacement of the Palestinian political rights. This should not come in replacement of the political track. Because I'm sorry, I must warn that some countries are now doing more focus, or putting more focus on the humanitarian aid issue because they feel better. They feel better and they excuse themselves on behalf of their citizens when, yes, they are sending food or water or medicine, but they're not really tackling the root cause of the problem, which is by ending the Israeli military occupation, which is by recognizing the Palestinian state, which is by defining the border of the state of Israel that was recognized almost 8 decades ago. The one and only state, according to Montevideo and international law and international relations and recognitions of state, the basic procedure is the definition of the borders of such a state. Israel is the one and only country, again, which doesn't have defined borders. And this is exactly what allows a Smotrich like-minded people brag about annexing Judea and Samaria, about talking about the greater Israel, about confiscating not only lands in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and for the Palestinians, but also the Syrian lands, but also in Lebanon. So if we are serious about a strategic peace, stability, and prosperity for the region, it is not Iran that we should be fearful of. It is the Israeli military occupation.
I think there's time for just one more round of questions, but I will ask I'll ask you to please be very brief. So just limit it to 30 seconds.
Yeah. And also people we haven't heard from before. Yes, if we take woman there and then the woman here in the front, and then I think squeeze in a third one if you can all be very, very brief, the gentleman at the back. Here first, and then here at the front, and then, yeah. Yeah. You pass the mic on there, yeah? First microphone here, and then the second one. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Something that seems to have been happening recently is the identification of individual members of the Israeli military responsible for specific actions that may constitute war crimes. I know that Raji is involved in bringing case against members of the Israeli military who happen to be British citizens. I wonder, and of course the commander who ordered the shooting of Hind Rajab has been identified. Do people see the scope for more sanctioning by various countries, including the UK? I don't know how many individuals the UK has sanctioned, perhaps you do, and that impacting the behavior of individual Israelis.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to both speakers. I'm over here. My name is Andrula Kaminara. I'm an ex-EU ambassador. And I would like to comment on the point you were raising about EU countries. I have recently published an article about EU foreign policy and vis-a-vis Gaza. And basically the conclusion is that EU foreign policy is collateral damage to the war in Gaza. On every single thing that we normally do, we normally did, because I'm no longer inside, in foreign policy, every single point, when it comes to Gaza, we have not met the bar, in my view. And in fact, in my view, the whole credibility of EU foreign policy is being tested about how we are failing to actually do what we should be doing in the case of Gaza. So that's just the point. The question is, you were questioning the issue of legal tools to be used. What are the potential additional legal cases that can be taken in order to support the situation in Gaza? A lot have taken place, but are there any other avenues that have not been explored?
Thank you. So again, I'll ask our speakers to be very...
Can we squeeze in one more brief question from you?
Yes, I'll try to make it brief. Thank you, Dr. Dalal, for really highlighting the discrepancy, or the huge gap between what we say a commitment, a formal commitment to a two-state paradigm that is failing completely in reality. And the way we see it as the younger generations of Palestinians, me doing colonial legal history, I've realized that the myth of statehood, or the attachment of Palestinians to the myth of a state that does not really exist, is in direct continuation with the myth of equality within a civilizational paradigm of the 19th century onward. It's recast from an international global perspective. But I think the question is for you, because we've highlighted the role, we've kind of tended to focus on the role of the state, individuals, institutions, and I want to also highlight the point that we're sitting in an institution that is hosting this conference, but at the same time, it has an investment portfolio that goes into armed companies and investing in also Israeli companies and illegal activities. This university, the Student for Justice in Palestine in KCL have actually put up a report, and they've showed that the university invests 19.4 million in illegal settlements in the West Bank, including companies directly involved in land theft and also companies on the UN blacklist. So how do we get from rhetoric of equality and idealism towards how do we enact that also on an institutional level that does not also direct the state alone, but also how we as individuals here in institutions, what responsibilities do we have? Thank you.
We're going to focus on that question in the final session very much. Yeah.
So yeah, please, if you could volunteer some answers. But again, I'll ask you to be just very brief.
Regarding the British who were sharing the Israeli army, the genocide in Gaza, we know about hundreds of British who were there. And we gave very solid sample in 240 pages with names and facts to the War Crime Unit in Scotland Yard. We did that for simple reason. They cannot claim they don't know anymore. I mean, it's the work of police and prosecutor who should, following any British citizen who committed war crime, crime against humanity, whatever, in UK or outside, and hold him or her accountable. They cannot claim they don't know. They are having it right now, and it's on the record. But I want to go to another point. UK said from day one, as well as US, as EU, and many other European Western countries, Israel have the right of self-defense. This is evil. This is shame. Never, ever in history, occupation have the right of self-defense. In Rome Statute, actually, occupation, a crime of aggression. That's how it's defined. So accordingly, the entire rhetoric, it's like you are giving political cover for what Israel is doing. Now, having said that, it's not only you are giving them political cover, but you are supporting them legally through protection in the court, and you are giving them arms. People in Gaza now, they are killed with the European, American bombs. It's not an Israelis. The intelligence information of the British drones and others are used to kill the people in Gaza. So the entire position of UK, I don't call them complicit. They are partner in the genocide crime and what's going on there. And that's what should be.
Thank you. Dalal, I'll give you the final word, if you may.
Well, I hear you. I hear you, and it's on people like yourself, like myself, like everybody in the audience, to keep telling the truth. Because like Israel had managed for a couple of decades to brand themselves as the democracy of the Middle East and the high-tech nation and the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, and while in 19 months everybody knows now the truth about apartheid and genocide Israel, we need to keep telling the truth until we stop the sugarcoating under the labels of peace process negotiations and two-state solution. I have friends and family in Gaza right now. And up until this moment, as we speak, people are under Israeli fire. We cannot underestimate the intelligence of the Palestinian people. Not in the West Bank, not in East Jerusalem, not in Gaza, not in the audience here. But we need to remember that we have an individual responsibility. Individual responsibility, not only in being pro-Palestinian, but in being pro-justice, pro-peace, pro-international law, and what is mostly important is being pro-humanity. It's upon us, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and a round of applause for our speakers.